Hey everybody, it's the Keto Baron coming back at you again. Thanks everybody for watching my first couple of videos, for the likes, the subscriptions, any comments, anything like that. I really appreciate it. And I decided that we're going to do another one here. So first, before I get into any of that, please like, comment, subscribe. It really helps the channel. It helps me personally feel good about doing this. I'm not worried about the YouTube metrics or anything like that. I'm just worried about sharing my story and hopefully helping somebody. So when you do that, that helps get that to more people. Aside from that, I'd like to give everybody kind of a roadmap of what I plan on doing. My first video, I detailed the 5 things that I did in order to drop my A1C from 12.9 to 5.7, as well as lose about 70 pounds in the process over the last 9 months. Those 5 things I plan on going in depth on each one and discussing and giving you my impressions and my results and what worked for me and what didn't, as well as recipes or tips and tricks or different thoughts that I have on type 2 diabetes, on how to reverse that diagnosis, and as well as the keto diet and different things to do. In June, actually, I'm going to do a carnivore month of June with some friends of mine in order to kind of get and introduce those guys into the keto lifestyle. And it really is more than a diet, it's a lifestyle. So we're going to do that in June, and I'll chronicle that and probably have some pretty in-depth numbers. I'm going to take my numbers at the beginning of the month and throughout the month and see what my weight, my blood sugar look like as I do that. So that should be some good fun as well coming up. Having said all that, let's get right into what I wanted to talk about. And the first thing was how I got into keto. I think before anything else, the process and the story of the steps I used to get into keto, once I figured out it was for me and kind of the story around that might be pretty helpful for everybody. So let's start with that. And in order to get that, I probably have to go back to 2018 when I was first diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And when I was diagnosed then, I was terrified. It was a 10.1. I didn't know what to do. I started taking the advice from my doctors and I followed that to the letter of the law. And when I did that, I saw some immediate success. My 10.1 went to 6.0 in about 4 months. Which was absolutely fantastic. But I didn't have any structure in order to keep me around that. I didn't have a good process. It wasn't a lifestyle change. It was more me cutting out some carbs here and there and kind of hoping that worked for the most part. And it did, and it was with a lot of medication. It was with, at the time, at first it was insulin and metformin. Then it was Ozempic as well as metformin, and those things will really help. And at times, some of that is kind of like a cheat code for your diet. Once you start cutting out just a little bit of carbs and you start using those things, your numbers will go down. You'll feel a little bit better. You'll lose a little bit of weight, but it's not really anything for me that was sustainable. It wasn't something I could do over time. And to that point, and probably what influenced and affected me the most was acceptance that I was always going to have type 2. And that made me feel like, well, the best I was going to do is manage it. So if I'm taking the medicine and if I'm kind of cutting my carbs here and there and my numbers are okay and they're not as bad as they were, then I'll still be fine. And what I didn't realize was that I needed a lifestyle change, that I needed a change in structure. I needed better support for myself. And over the years, it became evident that I didn't have that. And it started in 2019. I would say the year that we sold our house and we moved into this one, and I'm in the garage of this one now. But it started then. As hectic as it can be when you're trying to sell your house and buy a new one at the same time, that leads to some pretty poor dietary decisions as you're running around and you're at the store one night and you're moving things another night and cleaning the house and all that stuff on top of. And I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of folks that might be in a similar situation. I have a very active athletic son who was in high school at the time, and he was busy with his sports, and he wrestled and played baseball and played hockey and played lacrosse. And we were always, if it wasn't something related to the house, it was something related to his sports. And when you're out with your kids running around after them and working, you can make very poor dietary decisions. So it really kind of started then in 2019, where leave work, probably wouldn't eat a great lunch at work whatsoever, and then I'd have to grab something quick, like a couple cuts of pizza, and then hurry up and go to his game. And then after his game, he'd be hungry, so we'd all grab food together, and it would always be something that wasn't the best for you. I'm here in Pittsburgh, so maybe we stopped and grabbed Permani's after, and a Permani sandwich or Permani's wings probably wasn't the best dietary decisions for me to make. But you get into those bad habits because you're running around, and at that point you just need fuel, and that stuff fits the bill. Once COVID hit, I really kind of hit rock bottom diet-wise, because I work from home during COVID. The only real chance for me to get out of the house was to go pick up food, and it was to go pick up bad food. So whether it was breaded chicken wings one night, or whether it was pizza, or whether it was drive-through at the local Wendy's or McDonald's, that was the escape, was going out to get food. As to where prior to, you would be out of work all day, you would come home, you'd want a nice home-cooked meal. Well, if I spent all day at home, I really wanted to go out and eat something. And then as restaurants opened up, it just kind of made it a little bit worse, even to go pick up takeout food. And with being busy, my diet really got terrible over those years of COVID, and it led to really bad habits, really terrible habits for me, which all came into a head the summer of last year. I felt terrible through most of the summer. As it turns out, I had an infection in my leg. And in August of last year, it became unbearable, and I had to go to the hospital. And over the course of 5 days, they removed it. I came very close to losing my right leg. And in that whole process, when they took my A1C, and I told them I was a type 2 diabetic, and I'd fallen off my medication and all kinds of things like that, my A1C was 12.9. And that was a big wake-up call for me. That was a huge moment of reckoning, where I had to realize what I was doing had to stop. Now, in the hospital, they give you some advice. They have a nutritionist come in, and they have something, or they recommended something called, let me grab my notes here, a carb choice diet. And essentially what that is it's a means to have you control or some food portion control, and reduce the amount of carbs that you're eating in your meal. And how it works is 1 carb choice equals 15 grams of carbohydrates. So they gave me, through every meal, I was allowed to have 4 carb choices. So 60 grams of carbohydrates in a meal. And I was allowed to have 3 meals a day, right? That's what you have when you're at the hospital. So over the course of a day, I could have 180 grams of carbs. Now, I now realize that probably is terrible. And I probably knew it then, because some of the things that you could have a hamburger with bun. That was like 1 carb choice or 1.5 carb choices. You could have some pancakes. That was 1 or 1.5 carb choices to have that. You could have a small piece of cake. That was 1. All of these things, while I was in the hospital, I was like, I shouldn't be eating any of this stuff. I shouldn't. Why am I eating this? And then when they would take my sugar, they would be like, oh, wow, I don't know why your sugar's not going down. And I was like, well, probably because I'm eating carbs. Like, I'm not a doctor, but if I keep putting this stuff in my body, you're going to test me, and it's going to be there. So we went through that while I was in the hospital. And while I was in the hospital, I got pretty mad and upset at all this stuff. And what really kind of was the straw that broke the camel's back was I went down for a procedure one of the last days I was there. When I came back up, they ordered my breakfast for me, which is not uncommon. And in that breakfast, one of the things they gave me were 4 ounces of orange juice. Now, anybody that's type 2 or anything of that nature knows that orange juice is a pretty big no-no if you're type 2. And even 4 ounces of it, and I think it was 1 carb choice, because I went and I looked, and I didn't drink it, but I looked at this and said, this is not for me. I can't do this. This is ridiculous. Like, all I'm going to do is have high numbers, and I'm going to get sick again, and all this, the stuff is still going to keep happening to me. So I have to find something better than what they're offering. And I knew that cutting my carbs was a good idea, but I was looking for anything, especially while you're sitting in a hospital room, you have nothing but time. In that time, I sat there on YouTube and I researched on my phone, or I brought my laptop. I had my wife bring my laptop in, and I brought and I looked at everything I could, any video I could, and I started finding some really good and really interesting information. And when I searched, and I will post some of this down in the comments, link some of it so that you can also look. I found Dr. Ken Berry and Dr. Sten Ekberg, and both of those videos started talking about metabolic disease. They started talking about type 2 diabetes and a ketogenic diet in order to help relieve those things. And it really gave me some confidence. It really gave me support. And it really gave me an understanding of what I could do in order to make my health better, in order to make my life better. And I had felt with the advice that I had gotten before that I was always kind of walking on eggshells, that it was, you can't eat carbs, but watch which meat you eat, but watch what you have here. And at the end, eating a salad only wasn't going to be good enough for me based on their recommendations. I needed to know what I could eat. I had a giant hole in my leg from the infection, and my wound care doctor was telling me to eat as much protein as possible. So, all right, so I have to eat protein, but I can't eat any carbs, but I have to watch what protein. And I was like, this is all crazy. Like, I had to research what could I do to make myself better in all ways. Like, forget all this specific, whatever my specific ailments were, what was going to make me healthier overall. And that's where I found those videos. And those videos were incredibly helpful. They changed my life. They opened my eyes to what could be possible and what I could do. But I realized that I had to start doing it. So as I watched those videos while I was in a hospital, and once I came home, resting my leg, I had nothing but time to research these things. So I kept watching videos, hours upon hours of this stuff, in order to kind of confirm that it was the right idea for me, and probably some other things to see what the debate was, right? Like what were the drawbacks to this? What were the problems that I could have? And I watched all that stuff, and I realized that in order to do this, the one thing I had to do, though, was I had to do it in a way where I could not overthink it, outthink it, justify it, talk myself into or out of anything. I'm the type of person that can talk myself into or out of anything. I can make rationalizations all day long. So I realized what I needed was a program or a process or a plan that I could start and build momentum and have success, and use that to build upon itself to get myself healthier. And that was one of the things that drew me to the ketogenic diet. And I realized that if I did that, I would have control. I could dictate what I wanted to do, and that this was more than a diet, it was going to be a lifestyle change. So I did those things. And how I did it was I realized that I had to start understanding what I was putting in my body. So I used an app called Carb Manager, and hopefully if I do it right when I edit the video, it will be right over here over my shoulder. And this app Carb Manager is real simple. What it does is it lets you put the food into the app that you've eaten. It tracks it and it keeps track of your macronutrients. So the fat, the protein, and the carbohydrates that you take in. It's all available there for you to see. And with that information, I could do it, and I did it diligently. I did it for every meal. I could look at what I was putting in my body, and from there I could figure out what those numbers were and what I could take in and what I could put out and how I could change my diet and manipulate my diet so that it was better for me. And I realized some things that, when you go to the doctor and you ask them, hey, should I drink a glucerna? Is that good for breakfast in the morning, or should I have a banana? Most of the times they'll say, yeah. If I went by that carb choice metric, a glucerna I think was like 1 carb choice. A banana was maybe 1.5, and there were benefits supposedly to having all those, and it was like, okay, well, these can't be so bad. Once I put them in the app and I could see how many carbs I was taking in, and I would look at the end of the day and I'd be like, wow, I'm kind of, I've been conscious of this, and I'm still at like 50 or 60 carbs, and then I'm looking at my numbers and I'm saying, hey, this doesn't equate uh, to any better health for my blood sugar. Like my blood sugar is still pretty high. I think I can get this lower. Like, is there maybe instead of eating that banana, which is high in carbohydrates, it does have potassium. Maybe there's other things that have potassium that I can get without the carbohydrates. So then that caused me to go look and something as simple as Googling what foods have the most potassium. Then I could look at what has the most potassium and I could figure out, hey, maybe an avocado is better than a banana, or hey, steak has plenty of nutrients in it, but why don't you try just eating some of that? Along with the videos I was watching made me realize that, yeah, I could probably go along the keto path. I can make some changes. That glucerna in the morning really wasn't helping me. It wasn't making me feel full in any way, shape, fashion, or form. It just seemed like a bunch of 15 grams of carbohydrates that I couldn't replace I could replace easily throughout the day with nearly anything else. That a Greek yogurt at 7 grams of carbohydrates would be better than that at 15, and I felt more full at the time eating that. So I used a gradual progression, but I used Carb Manager in order to do that, and look at the food that I was putting into my body. And this was the most important thing that I did. By far and away, this first step was more important than anything that I did, because it let me have control over what I was eating and why I should or shouldn't eat something. And then I knew, hey, if I have bacon and eggs for breakfast is not a lot of carbohydrates. I can fill up on that pretty good, and that should keep me full for most of the day. I knew that, hey, if I have almonds or if I have sunflower seeds as a snack, I knew that those were much healthier and those would not impact the rest of my day and the rest of my eating for the rest of the day nearly as much as having anything else, or breaking down and grabbing the candy bar out of the machine while I was at work or anything of that nature. I knew by having this information on Carb Manager what I was doing to my body, and I could connect it to the levels that I had on my A1C or my glucose from testing it all the time. And for me, I have a Livongo meter because my work pays for it. A lot of people have continuous glucose monitors. Either is fine, but you can start to connect. Oh, okay, my A1, my glucose is higher, and maybe I should try something different than the banana or what have you. And that's what really helped me get the ball rolling on getting into a ketogenic diet, on changing my life, on regaining control of my metabolic health. That was the big tool for me that started all of this. And then I felt like once I could do this and see what I was putting into my body, I could do other things. I could start doing intermittent fasting. I could start exercising. I could start getting better rest and things of that nature, all to improve my health and to make me feel better. So that's really it. That's really what I wanted to hammer home. I know people with diets, a lot of times we feel that the diet is like, on Monday, I'm going to start and I'm going to do this, and I'm not going to stop doing this until I'm healthy again. And a lot of times that's not a really good structure in order to get healthy. Now, there are some people that can do that. There are some people that have no problem. They have the willpower to say, hey, I'm never going to eat another carb again starting Monday morning, and then they can do it, or they can do it for a length of time. To me, that was never going to work. I was always going to talk myself into it. So what I did instead was I worked myself into it by looking and saying, oh, okay, this is what I have, this is what I'm eating, this is what I could stop eating, and this is what I could start eating. This was the basis for my research and figuring out and finding out what new and different foods that maybe I wanted to try. And it gave me a structure to make improvements, right? And then I wasn't dependent on anybody else. And that was very important for me. And I think it's important for a lot of people, because a lot of diets fail. And I think a lot of reason why dieters fail is because they don't have that structure. They don't have that context that something like the Carb Manager app gives you in order to take the next step in improving your health. So that's what I wanted to share for you today. If you have any comments, let me know. Please like, subscribe, and comment, like I said at the beginning of the video. There's other things that I want to bring along. I have, recipe-wise, there's a keto breading that we use in my house for pork and for chicken that we love. We have a keto creme brulee that we have for dessert every once in a while, which I absolutely love. It's one of my favorite things to eat, as well as keto breadsticks, which when we've given the recipe out has been pretty popular, and a keto mousse for another dessert idea. But we have a bunch of those, my wife especially, that she keeps in order to keep me fed and happy. If you're interested in those, let me know. Please comment below if there's a keto recipe you'd like. Maybe even if enough people comment, we can even get my wife to come on here and share some of her thoughts, or maybe even just the recipe, and what she thinks of it. Maybe not what she thinks of me, but what she thinks of the keto diet and whatnot. And otherwise, hope to have more content for you. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll talk to you all later.